what is the true price of a piece of gold? Like, is it measured in currency or in the slow destruction of human lives and souls?
Wow. That's a really heavy, unsettling question to start with.
Right.
Yeah, and primarily because the answer isn't binary at all. We're culturally conditioned to view transactions as clean exchanges. You pay a certain amount of currency, you get an object, and boom, the interaction ends.
Right. It's just a simple swap.
Exactly. But literature often forces us to look at the hidden ledger,
Mhm.
the one where the currency being spent is actually biological time, moral integrity, and ultimately a person's life force.
Yeah, that hidden ledger is exactly what we're opening up today. But before we unpack all those mechanics, just a really quick favor. If you enjoy these deep dives, please, humbly, we ask you to subscribe to the Simplified Summary YouTube channel.
Yes, definitely do that.
And like this video, your support is literally the engine that allows us to keep bringing you these literary explorations. And we genuinely value reading your thoughts in the comments, so please share them.
It really does help a lot.
It does. So let's set the stage for today's mission. We are taking a deep dive into a classic cornerstone text by the legendary Hindi writer Premchand.
Oh, this is a brilliant one.
It really is. It's his devastating short story, Abhushan, which translates to ornaments or jewelry. And we're sourcing this from the Mansarovar collection.
Right, and we should probably start with the core philosophical premise Premchand lays out at the very beginning of the text.
Yeah, let's get into that.
So he points out that society basically operates on this massive assumption. The assumption that ornaments are as fundamentally necessary for a woman's beauty as a lamp is to illuminate a house.
A lamp for a house. That's such a specific image.
It is. And it establishes the cultural baseline immediately. He
Yeah.
isn't just setting a scene here. He is identifying a deeply ingrained systemic belief. I mean, think about it. The lamp doesn't just decorate the house, right?
No, it makes it functional. It lets you see inside.
Exactly. It makes it visible. So by equating jewelry with a lamp, Premchand is showing us that in this specific societal framework, a woman without ornaments is effectively, sitting in the dark,
Wow, she's socially invisible.
completely invisible.
But then, and this is what I love about Premchand, he immediately inverts that whole assumption with these haunting questions. He basically asks us to consider the mechanism of that light.
Right, the actual cost of the lamp.
Yeah. He asks, how much do these glittering metals actually dirty our bodies? How do they agitate our minds and, pollute our souls?
He's demanding that we look at the exhaust fumes of our desires.
Yes, the exhaust fumes, exactly. And I want you, the listener, to think about how this applies to your own life today. Have you ever wanted a luxury item so badly? Maybe
Yeah.
a specific watch or a car or some high-end tech.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. Have you wanted it so badly that the desire just became this absolute blind spot, completely obscuring all the good things you already had in your life?
That blinding effect of desire is such a universal trap. And Premchand dissects the anatomy of that trap perfectly through the inciting incident of this story.
So let's talk about that inciting incident. The opening sequence is pretty famous.
It is. So we meet Sheetla,
Mm-hmm.
and she is living in crushing absolute poverty.
Mhm.
And she decides to visit the home of the wealthy village Tulukdar, basically the landlord, a man named Kunwar Suresh Singh.
Right. She goes to see his newlywed bride.
Yes. But what is crucial here isn't just the fact that she visits, it's the specific sensory experience Premchand constructs for her in that room.
Oh, the language she uses there is just incredible. Sheila walks into the room and she registers absolutely nothing about the bride's humanity.
Nothing at all.
She doesn't notice the bride's face or her expressions or her natural beauty. Her vision is entirely hijacked by the blinding glitter of the jewelry.
She is completely hypnotized by the metal. It's all she sees.
Yeah. And that hypnotic state immediately ferments into something really destructive when she leaves.
Oh, it turns incredibly toxic. Premchand describes the psychological state she takes back home, and he doesn't call it a fleeting wish. He uses this visceral phrase. He calls it a snake rolling on her chest.
A snake rolling on her chest. That is such a heavy, suffocating image.
It is. It's a physical manifestation of psychological pain. It's venomous, it's suffocating, and the thing about a feeling like that is it requires an outlet.
Right, it has to go somewhere.
Exactly.
Yep.
So when her husband, Vimal Singh, returns home, she just unleashes all that venom on him.
She goes right after.
She does. She verbally attacks him, accusing her own father of ruining her life by, quote, tying her to him and pushing her into a well.
Wow.
Yeah, she holds her husband entirely accountable for her lack of social visibility. for her lack of that lamp.
You know, it is incredibly tempting to read that scene and just immediately write Sheetla off as this shallow, materialistic
Oh,
villain.
for sure. It's the easy read.
Right. And I want to push back on that a little bit. If we look at the mechanics of the society she's navigating, isn't she also a profound victim here?
That's a really important question.
Because she's in this deeply patriarchal structure that explicitly equates a woman's worth, her status, and her very identity with the amount of gold she wears. So her demand for jewelry isn't just about greed, is it?
No, I mean, you could argue it's a demand for personhood.
Exactly. Society has told her that without the gold, she is literally a zero.
Hmm.
So we kind of have to view her envy through the lens of a person desperately fighting against her own social erasure.
That is a vital distinction to make. She has fully internalized a deeply flawed societal metric for human value. But the true psychological labyrinth of this story, the thing that turns this from just a domestic dispute into a profound tragedy, lies in Vimal Singh's background.
Oh man, the background context is wild.
It really is. Because Vimal isn't just a guy who has always known poverty.
Yeah.
His ancestors were actually wealthy landlords themselves.
Wait, really? So they had money?
They had immense wealth. They possessed the exact kind of status and gold that Sheetla is currently agonizing over.
And this is where the bitter irony comes in. Because the family whose wealth just triggered Sheetla's suffocating envy, Kunwar Suresh Singh's family.
Yeah, his cunning father specifically.
Right. Suresh's father is the one who used his cunning to usurp all of Vimal's ancestral territory.
Yes. The wealth Sheetla is drooling over was essentially built on the ruins of her own husband's inheritance.
That is so messed up. Now, Vimal is reduced to the state where he doesn't even own a horse. He can barely secure 2 basic meals a day.
Exactly. So Sheetla is basically demanding that Vimal provide the exact kind of wealth that was systematically stripped from him by the very people she's currently idolizing.
It's just an impossible, paradoxical demand.
It really is.
Yeah.
And Vimal's response to this cruelty reveals this fascinating, deeply tragic mechanism of submission.
Right, because he doesn't fight back.
He doesn't. He doesn't point out the historical irony. He doesn't rage against the injustice of her demands. He simply absorbs her cruelty and accepts it as a mandate.
And his silence there speaks volumes about his own internal crisis. I mean, Vimal lost his ancestral land, which means he lost his inherent societal power.
He lost his identity as a provider.
Yeah. So his absolute refusal to fight back against Sheetla feels as this desperate attempt to cling to that role. He's been stripped of everything else that makes him a man in the eyes of his culture, so he decides he has to fulfill this one impossible material craving no matter what.
No matter the cost. And because he has no formal education and no specialized skills, he realizes he has to leave.
He exiles himself.
He does. He leaves the village, travels to Calcutta, and eventually crosses the sea all the way to Rangoon.
And life in Rangoon is just, it's brutal.
Brutal is almost an understatement. Vimal's physical decay in Rangoon isn't just a tragedy of labor, it is the literal biological translation of his life into currency.
Wow, biological translation of life into currency.
Yeah, because the text is surgical in detailing the factors that dismantle him. He is subjected to back-breaking, endless manual labor at the docks, loading and unloading these heavy ships.
Right, just grueling hours.
And he's battling the oppressive, completely unfamiliar climate of Rangoon. But most devastatingly, he enforces a strict starvation diet upon himself.
Oh, because he needs to save the money.
Exactly. Every single penny must be saved for the jewelry, which means he actively stops fueling his own body.
He's literally cannibalizing himself. Premchand even notes that the very glow of life fades from his face.
It's a slow suicide by labor.
And, you know, this is where the story bridges the gap between the 19th century and today so seamlessly for me.
Oh, how so?
Think about the modern iteration of hustle culture. We see this entire ecosystem of people working themselves into physical and mental collapse, taking on multiple exhausting jobs, completely sacrificing their sleep, their health, their relationships.
Oh, absolutely. The grind set mentality.
Right. And for what? Often it's just to afford a curated lifestyle, which is really the modern equivalent of the heavy gold ornaments, you know.
To project an illusion of status.
Exactly. To project that illusion to an audience that largely doesn't even care. Vimal is doing the exact same thing. He is trading the finite, irreplaceable drops of his actual life force for cold, inanimate metal.
It's the ultimate commodification of the self. He's sacrificing the biological reality of his existence to fund a social illusion for his wife.
It's tragic.
It is. And while Vimal is being hollowed out physically on the docks of Rangoon, Premchand shifts the narrative back to the village. He wants to show us the moral hollowing out of Sheetla and also of the landlord, Kunwar Suresh Singh.
Right, because meanwhile, back in the village, Sheetla gets exactly what she demanded. She has a husband who is out in the world extracting wealth for her.
But the immediate result of that is complete isolation.
Yeah, the narrative explicitly points out that both her mother and her mother-in-law are dead.
She has no safety net.
None. No elder guidance, no community. She's trapped in this bleak existence. She even notes that she feels like she has no refuge left but the god of death.
And that profound isolation sets the stage for a really fateful encounter.
With Kunwar Suresh Singh.
Yes, Suresh is riding by on his horse one day, and he spots Sheetla. And her immediate instinct is to shrink back. She hides behind closed doors.
Why does she hide?
Because she is consumed by shame. Her sari is torn, it's covered in patches, and it's highly indicative of her utter poverty.
Yeah.
She feels she isn't fit to be seen by a man of his status.
And this scene brilliantly deconstructs the mechanics of attraction and power, doesn't it?
Oh, masterfully. Because Suresh initially looks at her torn clothes and feels pity. He just sees a helpless, impoverished woman.
Right.
But within seconds, that pity mutates. Premchand says it turns into an ocean of lust.
An ocean of lust?
Yeah. The complete absence of jewelry, the lack of that very glittering armor that Sheetla so desperately covets, it actually makes her infinitely more captivating to him.
That is such a fascinating twist.
It is. He sees her natural, unadorned vulnerability, and it completely bypasses all his defenses. He starts actively contemplating seduction. He is literally weighing the massive social scandal of pursuing a married woman against his own immediate desire.
We are watching a powerful man standing on the absolute precipice of moral collapse here. He's ready to destroy his reputation, her marriage, the whole social order of the village.
Just for this impulse, right?
But then Premchand gives us this amazing psychological pivot. Suresh experiences a profound victory of will.
Yes, he catches himself.
He catches himself sliding into this ocean of lust, and he feels a deep, grounding shame. And the metaphor Premchand uses for this moment of self-correction is just brilliant.
The elephant in the ant.
Yes. He writes that Suresh resolves to kill this elephant of lust, this massive, stampeding, destructive force, not with a lion, but with an ant.
It's such a striking image.
It is. He doesn't try to use sheer brute willpower to wrestle his desires into submission. Instead, he uses a tiny, almost imperceptible psychological hack. He decides to call Sheetla sister.
Wow. Just that one word.
Just that one word.
It is a masterclass in cognitive reframing. By applying the linguistic label of sister to Sheetla, Suresh instantly erects this insurmountable cultural and moral boundary in his own mind.
He completely desexualizes the dynamic.
Entirely. His cultural conditioning regarding the sanctity of a sister is so deeply ingrained that simply utilizing the word acts as an impenetrable shield. The ant of a single spoken word successfully takes down the elephant of his rampant lust.
That is so powerful. But the tragic part is, because this happens entirely within Suresh's own mind, Sheetla is completely unaware of the moral boundary he just built.
Right. She has no idea.
All she knows is that this incredibly wealthy, powerful man looked at her with intense interest, and now he's intentionally staying away.
And this is exactly where the tragic irony of her vanity just explodes into view.
Oh yeah, it flares up big time.
It does. And Premchand inserts a really piercing philosophical question into the text at this exact moment. He asks, what is makeup but a loud sound to awaken sleeping lust?
A loud sound to awaken sleeping lust. That line fundamentally changes how we view adornment.
It really does. It completely strips away the illusion that jewelry and makeup are merely about personal expression or, just harmless beauty.
Right. Premchand is arguing that they are aggressive tools of provocation. They are designed specifically to demand attention and trigger desire in the observer.
And we see Sheetla deploy those tools with desperate precision. I mean, once Suresh stops visiting, the perceived loss of his gaze drives her vanity into absolute overdrive.
She starts dressing up meticulously, right?
From head to toe, she is chasing the high of being desired, of wielding that specific type of power over a man of his stature. She even goes as far as ordering jasmine flowers directly from Suresh's own garden to weave garlands.
Wait, she uses flowers from his own garden?
Yes.
She is literally taking the resources of his own wealthy estate to build a trap for him.
That's exactly what she's doing.
Because she isn't weaving those garlands for her own enjoyment. She's utilizing them as a loud sound to force him to look at her again.
Yet the profound tragedy here is that her artificial adornments fail exactly where her natural, unadorned vulnerability had almost succeeded.
Because of the ant.
Exactly. Because Suresh has already deployed the ant and categorized her as a sister, her loud sounds fall on completely deaf ears. He ignores her entirely.
Wow.
Yeah, the more she artificially amplifies her appearance, the more futile her efforts become. Because she is trying to awaken a lust that he has already deliberately euthanized.
It is a devastating miscalculation on her part. She thinks the power lies in the objects, in the flowers and the theoretical gold, completely missing that her only real power was in her authentic humanity.
And this obsession with artificial power transitions us right into the harrowing conclusion of the narrative.
Yeah, the bill for all this desire finally comes due. Vimal Singh finally returns home from Rangoon.
But he is fundamentally altered.
He's broken.
He is shattered. The Vimal who returns is essentially a husk of a human being. He is gravely ill, suffering from agonizing physical pain, his body entirely broken by the punishing labor and the self-imposed starvation.
He did it, though. I mean, he successfully extracted the gold she demanded.
He did. But the cost of the extraction was his own life.
And Premchand's description of his final day is so chilling. It isn't just a medical summary of a dying man. He elevates it into this terrifying personification of death itself.
Oh, the imagery there is so dark.
It is. Death is described as a heartless, stone-cold entity that is entirely indifferent to human suffering. It cannot be bargained with. It's not moved by the tears of a wife, and it certainly doesn't care about the immense sacrifices Vimal made to acquire a few pieces of metal.
Premchand notes that death plays cruel jokes on the living, constantly changing its form to strike when least expected.
Right. Sometimes it approaches as a lion, sometimes a jackal.
It manifests as fire or as water, but its defining characteristic is that it always operates in the dark of night. It's this unstoppable force that completely ignores the petty material concerns of humanity.
And the timeline of Vimal's end is brutally swift. He doesn't even get the grace of a peaceful recovery or, meaningful time with his wife.
No, time is up.
On the third night after his return, the physical toll reaches its absolute limit. Vimal dies.
And the heavy, oppressive silence of the village night is suddenly shattered by the piercing sound of wailing echoing from their house.
It's just devastating.
It really is. And if we pull back and synthesize the entire machinery of this tragedy, the true cost of that opening premise becomes agonizingly clear.
The lamp metaphor.
Right. Society told Sheetla that ornaments were the lamp she needed to illuminate her life. And she believed that narrative completely. She allowed the blinding glitter to cultivate a venomous envy that she unleashed on her husband, demanding he conform to an impossible standard.
And she gets exactly what she asked for. She gets the gold. But what is the actual reality of her situation at the end of the text?
The reality is total, irreversible destruction. Her blinding desire resulted in the agonizing death of a husband who was willing to literally work himself into the grave to appease her.
And now she's a widow.
Yes. Living in a historical and cultural framework that is notoriously merciless and marginalizing to widows. The gold she coveted didn't bring her status, it didn't secure the gaze of the wealthy landlord, and it certainly didn't bring her happiness.
She is left entirely alone in the dark, clutching the very metal that extinguished the only real light in her life.
That is the ultimate horrific realization. She traded a living, breathing human connection. A man whose loyalty was so profound it became fatal for inanimate objects that offer no warmth and no comfort.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Abhushan, it's crucial to sit with Premchand's underlying warning here. The external markers of success, the glittering objects we covet from afar and assume will validate our existence, they possess an incredible capacity to pollute our judgment.
They create a terrifying blind spot.
Exactly, making us completely oblivious to the inherent value of the people and the life we already hold.
It's an architectural flaw in human nature that Premchand exposes brilliantly. Because when we allow society to dictate our internal metrics for happiness, when we confuse the artificial adornment with the actual substance of a life, the resulting collapse is almost always devastating.
I want to leave you with one final lingering question to ponder as you step back into your day.
Let's hear it.
When you look at the things you are striving for, the things you are sacrificing your time, your energy, and perhaps your relationships to acquire, if the pursuit of an object requires you to sacrifice the very people you want to share it with, are you possessing the object or is the object possessing you?
Oh, that is the ultimate test of our desires right there.
Thank you all so much for investing your time and your minds in this deep dive. Before you go, please remember to subscribe to the Simplified Summary channel, like this video, and drop a comment letting us know what part of Vimal and Sheetla's story struck you the most.
Yeah, was it the historical irony of the stolen land, the psychological hack of the elephant and the ant?
We really want to hear your analysis.
Keep questioning the systems of value around you and never stop examining the true cost of the things you desire.
Until next time, keep diving deep. And remember, sometimes our desires act like a funhouse mirror magnifying the shiny, superficial things in the distance, while completely distorting and shrinking the vital, living things standing right next to us. Catch you on the next one.